Mr. Allen.
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Ms. Daniels. Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Madison. Here. Mr. Majors.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
President, thank you, Mr. Petrosky. We now will move on to committee business. This evening, we have Public Safety Committee, and we have quarterly reports from Harrisburg. I will now turn it over to our Public Chair, Safety Chair, Ms. Green.
Thank you, President Williams. Good evening, Chief Carter, Commissioner Carter, excuse me. Thank you for coming today. I know we've been with some police reports for a little bit now, so if you could just go over the summary that you gave us, just for the public's information, let you know what's going on. Police Department, see here, things to about. If you could just give us, give the public a little overview of what's going on, we appreciate it.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Madam President of the Honorable City Council members, hello. I understand this is the last session for this time.
No, sir. Thanks.
That's right. As outlined in the City Council report for the three Brooklyn City Councils, we had a total number of citizen complaints at platoon levels at 7. The types of complaints were all civil misconduct. Complaint demographics was 1 white male, 2 black males, and 2 black females. 1 black female made 3 different complaints to the agency. Officer demographics were 9 white males and 1 black male. The findings, unfounded 3, exonerated 4. We'll flip to the next page. It outlines the complaints, the misconducts, and who handled it, and the demographics. The next page outlines and founded what investigation means. The investigation indicates that the acts complained of did not occur or failed to involve police personnel. Exonerated acts would not occur but were justified, lawful, and proper. Not sustained means the investigation fails to discover sufficient evidence to prove or disprove the allegations made in the complaint. Sustained means the investigation disclosed sufficient evidence to clearly sustain the allegation. And policy failure, investigation reveals that the alleged acts did occur. However, the officer was acting in accordance with the policy. The next page is outlines the report by Detective Focus, and I guess that the main thing here is that out of all of the allegations, 1 detective was disciplined and 1 officer was let go. Yes. And if you keep flipping the pages, it breaks down the demographics of the bureau. It goes into, there were a total of 144 use of force reports. It breaks down the shift, A shift 2020 to 0700 hours. There were 56 use of force reports. B shift 0600 to 1500 hours. There were 29 use of force reports. And C shift, there was 42. Free crime unit, there was 6. Thug unit, there was 9. Women unit, there was 1. And CID, there was 1. The next page outlines the OC spray. 14 reports of OC spray. Assaults within the feet is 29. Display of duty weapons 50. Display of taser is 16. Taser is 31. Acid times 2. Then it details the actions used by the subjects that were apprehended. Assaults on police officers and figure 93 credit incidents. There were 8. There were 18 fights and 25 firearms.
Where are you going to further with this? So then you
a
have.
rubber or a beam. You go to the next page. It basically says, you know, that we have two officers and one detective, one officer. It gets into vehicle pursuit, urgent order, 07-19. And the next page is basically, this is the how many officers that we hired, how many officers we left, and the reasons that they left. And it outlines the officers' names and how many officers that we have. That's what oh. I want to hear sort of fast.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. I just have one question for us. I'm gonna open up to my colleagues. I noticed it says for the year of 2020. Does this only go to December of 2020, or is that up until when the report was brought on 4/23?
This window report, this one.
So the numbers are good up until 4/23?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's the first question I have. I'll open it up to my colleagues and see if they have any questions, and I will come back to myself. I will start to my left here with Councilman Alvarez.
Thank you, Councilwoman Green. Thank you, Commissioner, for sharing the report. I don't think I have any questions. Thanks for clarifying that the numbers are accurate through April of 2021. I hope I'm not being premature, but when could we expect the next set of numbers as we prepare to enter the summer?
I will make sure that you have that information in every quarter.
Thank you.
Councilman Matson?
I have a chance to look at how many officers have we hired, how many.
We're losing quite a few officers for different reasons. Most of them because the surrounding agencies, they work. They come to Harrisburg, recruit from Harrisburg City because we have, I believe, some Western officers out there. So the officers, they not free to make more money to do less work.
That's still an ongoing issue.
Yes. And so we rectify that in the conversation.
I may have some questions later, but how many officers do we have per shift currently?
A platoon, I believe, has 24 officers. B platoon has about 24 singles per next.
And then what would be a realistic number you think that would be?
I believe that. When I first got hired, we got 5 officers.
Can you step back a little bit?
Staffing will always be a major issue. But I believe with 75 officers.
What was the number we have currently?
Thank you, President Williams.
Thank you, Chief. Everybody does, yes, but thank you, Commissioner, for coming to see me, especially in the report. I'm really concerned that we don't have enough officers, so what are we gonna do? I do have plans in mind that I wanted to speak to you about, but I think that I agree with you that we need them walking on the streets, we need them in the community, interactive, know the community, know the people. 11 police officers hired in 2020. What are we doing, or what are you doing, or intending to do to recruit more diverse force?
We went around to the different colleges. We went to, research the military bases. We're going to get some ties at gyms and various other places for everybody. Right now, my concern is that we just need good police officers. I'll take anybody. Well, I'm saying anybody that has, anybody that has just a background.
Right.
Anybody,
And also,
staying in record, right? That's
communicate with our
So,
residents.
anybody know that can articulate to my citizens here that they're passionate for people, that have a passion to do right, to fight people for people. I need them. So, but right now, as you know, the police were sort of made of the enemy. One, was for this, another incidents that happened nationwide that didn't necessarily actively want it active, but the whole has taken a hit. And well, other major cities, you'll see that police officers are just seeing them just walking out. They're seeing being silent for this. So right now, it's just a struggle to
Oh, we need to change that.
yes, we do. And
Certainly.
we need to change the narrative. I need a firm to get out there and just tell the good work that Harrisburg City and the visions that we have for the city.
And 9 officers left the park, so they were not all retired. So they were recruited by other agencies.
Some were, and some became district justices because of elections.
Oh, okay.
But the majority left for different agencies.
One more question. Do you see a rise in crime? Because I see you have 3 shifts. Is that your 3 to 11 or 2 to 10?
Yes, ma'am, we always said.
Where's your highest crime? Because I see you have in the one shift 6. What shift would that be?
Middle shift, probably. Middle shift is usually the most active shift because people are getting off work. Kids are out of school, it's just the busiest shift.
And then during the evening, is that the 1400 to 2300? Is that the evening shift?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you talk about being the force employed by the officers, display case, what does it mean, display case? What do you want actually facing the individual?
No, that just means that you show the tape.
Are you giving a warning before you go?
Yes,
And then the taser?
yes, ma'am. Use of force is never pretty, never looks good. I don't care what it is. It never looks pretty.
Is
It's
that a
not
last
pretty.
resort though? Are we using taser as a last resort?
The way that is used on the continuum is one of the first things that officers do. Besides, the officer presidents and
So one more question. The action subjects, which calls for hands and feet, were they kicking and hitting the obstacle?
Yes, ma'am.
Sports are really becoming better. We have to understand that there's separation. Not just one group, but both sides. So
And for the most part, ma'am, you know, we don't have problems that other cities have. Do right now, we have some fantastic people here, and people want to get along. That is separation. You know, it's unfortunate, you know, that some things feel like, you know, people are speaking on this.
yeah, I can do some measure. Say the voices. Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Vice President Allen.
I wanted to just go back on the second, talking about definitions and unfounded. It appears that 3 were unfounded. Do you ever have any other information, like was it because it wasn't our agency? Because I know we have the ability to interact obviously with
Yes,
police, state police.
and that happens, you know, we do. You know, they say that was Harrisburg police.
As part of your process, are you able to identify the who you refer?
Yes, we do.
And then once the system has been essentially adjudicated, what type of information goes out to the system? Is it, do they get a series report, a summary, and what type of stuff do they receive?
They receive a letter from me outlining.
And in terms of the Bureau initiating investigations, knowing that they're probably obviously not triggered by a system, because that would be when that occurs, are they often raised by peers? Are they raised by the supervisor who typically would initiate something that would, so you would initiate the investigation?
Yes,
But what means does that come to your purview? Is it because, I'm just wondering, there's a lot about people that talk about kind of the blue code that they no one's going to turn themselves, their colleagues. So I'm kind of curious about in our experience with these bureau initiated investigations, how do they start? Is it because the supervisor? Is it because something happened? I'm just trying to get a sense of that.
well, something usually happens that officers are concerned about the actions of the officers. And so they start talking, and they tell a superior, and that superior to the captain, and when I able to.
Do you feel we at least create an environment in which officers have both the freedom and the ability?
Oh, yes.
Building upon what Council President was talking about, the stages of which you go to kind of use of force, and it seems like there's obviously a big drop off after a taser or anything else. But what are we doing ongoing by way of training, particularly in light of national events? And I think you make a good point that it's not that we don't have the problems here, it's that we haven't experienced it. I think in some respects that's a real positive, view of the department. But I'm also cognizant to know that we still need to continue to address training opportunities with law enforcement. And I know we've had some conversations throughout the summer through town halls, planning for something that's together kind of a public forum. But I'd like to reiterate my desire to make sure that we are creating training components to ensure that our officers are competent in dealing with diverse constituencies. I know that we do our best to recruit diverse diverse law enforcement group. And then there's challenges along with that. But at the end of the day, the majority of the officers roaming our streets don't really look like the residents that we're serving. And to ensure their effectiveness of what they do, I'm always concerned about how we can train. And that's not just based on race, gender, but sexuality, gender identity, things like that. In heightened environments that we live in the world that we live in, I want to make sure that we are doing our part to ensure that we're giving our officers the best training possible to handle, to reduce needs. Do you feel that right now that we need to look at additional things to do? Are we doing effective training? What are some things out there that we need to be doing as we look forward to? And I realize there's another side of the coin of saying, look at competition, look at, the reasons we lose officers, but I've been very concerned with that in terms of how we work with them to serve.
We have a good training program, aggressive training program. Even in situations where our mental health training has really helped. Our last incident, it went nationally with the issue itself, and our officers talked her down. We have other agencies coming to us asking, how are we able to take hundreds and hundreds of firearms off the street without pulling the trigger on people? It's because of the training that we have. We have a lot of CERT team members on the team. We have a lot of people with other training. We're constantly looking for new training, new ideas, better ways of doing things here. So we are a well-trained agency, but we can be better. And we're always looking to be better.
Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about kind of recruiting and retention piece. This time when I got a call from a reporter yesterday, I was raise questions back to that. Because we've had a lot of conversations about losing officers, municipalities reduce money. When I look at the roster and I realize the number of officers that we've had that have been for a period of time, I'm actually curious and ask the reverse question. It's not why they're leaving, why are they staying? What are we learning about the officers decide to invest in our communities? How are we mirroring that into the way that law enforcement agencies?
Good officers are here because they love what they do. It's not a matter of money. It's a matter of protecting and serving the public. That's why they're still here. I'm here for that reason.
And I'm bringing that up because I think for me, that's what I want to see in new officers coming forward. And I'd love to see what we can do to further screen out those who are just making a monetary decision. Number one reason people leave an organization across the board is for a perceived lack of value. Make a change based on money alone, or necessarily people I want to hire in the first place. That's something that I think so I've been thinking about in a reverse angle than what I think a lot of people do.
The younger generation, they're driven by different things. Not that they're not good officers, not that they don't typically have a lot of good young officers. I hate seeing them leave, but their values are just totally different. It just seems like, that they don't let racists hold them back. They want to experience something for a couple of years and just move on, but they're good officers. And so we have to find a way, to keep them focused here. And a lot of it has to do with money. A lot of it has to do with the number of calls that we have, the volume of calls and serious calls. A lot of it has to do, because a lot of other agencies, they get to talking to them behind our backs, and they include them. Harrisburg is one of the only few agencies that will hire somebody, put them through training, give them a training play, pay insurance and everything. The other agencies, they don't do it. They just wait until we, trained up, and they come and they snatch them from us. That's our biggest problem right now. But I believe that, if we have a competitive package, I think that that will probably change. Because we do have a lot of officers, general officers that want to stay here.
And I agree with that. And it's not that I'm just trying to look at the I guess when we track talent, you know, I'd like to mirror stories of people here invested like yourself and like so many. When we look at the roster, I think we focus sometimes on the left, but we've got this great state mirroring their motivations. It is perhaps a ticket for us to utilize. But I agree, it's not a fail-proof technique. I'm not saying we should look at those things. I just think commitment and their internal commitment really matters, and looking at that reason alone for how we recruit people. But I can talk about it for hours. We can talk on the side.
Thank you very much, Councilman Majors.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Commissioner. So my first couple of questions go to the process, because I think we're back in another situation where we've asked multiple times to get the information. It took a little while for the information disseminated to us. So I'm just, what is the process for the quarterly reports to be provided to us? Because every report we've received thus far has really been about, we end up getting annual reports, right? So I'm going back to the 2019 report that we received about complaints, which we got in June of 2020, which had 3 complaints. We're getting the 2020 report now, which has a total of 4. So what I'm interested in is, when were the complaints filed, right? So we have 4. Were they all first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter? That's so we're getting, as for quarterly reports, we're getting annual reports. So I want to be able to dive a little bit deeper and get a little bit more granularity into when the complaints were filed. Because right now we have 7 up in the first quarter, which there's an upward trend of people actually using the system, which is a good thing in my view. But in the past, we've only gotten them on a full basis. So do you have any sense of when in 2020 when the reports were received?
I don't have the actual date, that can get to us.
Okay. And then in terms of internal process, who's doing the report? I mean, I know this year, in the last budget, we provided positions for data analysts. And these are all showing that there's one individual that's listed on these doing, that's providing the report. So who receives the complaint process? Can you walk me through that? So someone files online or submits it, who's receiving it, and what's that process look like?
When someone files online, Detective Crocus receives it. He investigates it and he determines if it's founded, unfounded, sustained, what have you. Detective Crocus, who's also retiring, will have to find somebody to take his place. But since we do have a criminal analyst, a crime analyst, we have a accreditation manager. You should be getting what you need more time. Because we have ample people to do that. Detective Crocus, he wears several different hats. When there is something major going on, he looks in that there too. So everybody's just doing 4 different ways. Not making excuses, because it's my responsibility to make sure that we get the timely manner, and that doesn't always happen.
Right. So again, what I'm trying to do then is figure out, say policy prescription here. Is it incumbent upon council to then? I had a brief conversation earlier about maybe us looking at revising the reporting requirements, putting some dates certain in there, because right now it just says quarterly. It's supposed to come to council, but there's no real method of how that occurs, right? So we just say we would like to receive it, and we ask, we don't receive it. We're told it goes up the chain, goes down the chain, and we still end up with help information that we're asking for in a timely manner. So putting a little bit more, and I guess this is more of a statement first for the council president to contemplate and think about doing to tighten up any of the language in this, to say, hey, after every quarter within X amount of days, you need to provide us, they need to reach out to the city clerk and provide the information, because this is, again, as a citizen person, as a member of council, it's frustrating that we're at this point every single year, the past 3 years, where we're trying to get the reports and they're not coming in a timely manner. So just that's something for us to think about. The next thing for me is, I'm just gonna say, took a bunch of notes here, so just in terms of the timing, again, all of these reports are coming out on the same day, so all the use of force. So does the person have help, or are we building in some of the redundancy that's needed for someone else to do this? Because again, I think if someone's compiling it, does he have assistance needed to put the paperwork in, or is it all just one person doing all of these reports?
Just one person right now.
Okay. And the next thing for me is a lot of this information seems relatively scrubbed. Are we able to put it on a forward-facing, publicly accessible website?
What do you mean scrubs?
That it doesn't have any individual identifying information in terms of the reports. So one of the things that I think we all hear from members of the public is that they would like to have access to information regarding complaints to the extent that it can be provided. I know other communities across the Commonwealth provide some information to their residents, at least on a website that's accessible. They can say, hey, you know, this year, this many complaints were filed. Are we willing to call that information up on our website?
Yes, we're going to do that.
Okay, do we have a plan?
I didn't plan an actual date after the accreditation meetings from start on this.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good to know, but then we need to have, and do we have would it be accessible on the Harrisburg Police website? Do we need to create a different site? I know other communities may have just sort of a complete site that just has stats on it that people can access.
I'm not sure what website we're going to put it on yet, but we're going to put it up. It's going to be a forward-facing document. It's going to be accessible to everybody that wants to look at.
Okay. And also, I know that there's some other reporting tools that we do have. I know I still think I've received a LexisNexis update about things that occur on the crime map. Are we looking at also getting more of that information? We're doing a lot of stuff with GIS. We have a new website. You know, hopefully here in the near future we'll be able to upgrade our mainframe. You know, get off that mainframe, go more cloud-based. We'll have getting some more tools. Are we looking to be able to utilize some of that technology to improve our reporting?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay, and then for me, so the new positions as a crime analyst and the data person, what data are they currently analyzing?
Right now, UCRs, we were in one system, we went to another system, so we have to mine that information from the system and put it into the new system. That takes time and effort. So that's what they're currently doing right now.
Okay. I have a couple of additional questions. I'll defer to experts.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels, any questions?
Sure, and I apologize, some of these things have already been answered since I came a little late. So the first question I have is, when someone files a complaint and you have the results, how do you communicate that to the complainant?
If the complaint comes up to my the detective Crocus, it goes through this system, the IA system. He lets me know who was founded, unfounded, exonerated, or what have you. And I send out a letter to that person explaining to them what the findings are. If the complainant comes to a platoon supervisor, it's handled at that level. And they usually like make a phone call back to that person, let them know what the findings are.
And when there are instances, I imagine some investigations take longer than others, so if you have one that has a really long investigation process, is there an in-between?
Yes,
So I see 3 of the complaints, were unfounded, which means that the facts didn't happen or they failed to involve police personnel. Do you know of those 3? Were there times where it was maybe city personnel that the person confused with police personnel?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, 3 of the complaints resulted in unfounded. Unfounded is investigation indicates that the facts complained of did not occur or failed to involve police personnel. So I was wondering if there were instances of the 3 complainants, were there instances where the person assumed a city employee was a police officer when it wasn't a police officer, it was just a city employee?
And there was usually a police officer from many different regions.
And then were there any of the complaints of the investigations, whether initiated internally or by, did any of those end up being investigated by outside agencies, or were all of them resolved internally?
There were a couple of investigations that were sent outside the city.
But the bulk you would say were resolved.
Yeah.
You would say the bulk of them were resolved internally.
I'm not following.
For most of the complaints resolved internally.
Oh, okay, yes, yes.
And I see that there were 5 car chases.
Yes,
I thought those were within, that those are permitted. Explain what happened.
we do not allow people to chase vehicles within the city limits unless it's a forcible felony. And we have them listed here because there was a complaint against the officers and they were disciplined for it.
But since that is kind of an internal, since that's an internal policy, it's like 5. Were the 5 complaints around one incident or was it
5 different states.
different? So was there any kind of retraining that gets back to the officers in the disciplinary
Yes.
process, or
Yes,
what do
every
they do
time we
for-
discipline people, we incorporate training,
so then they just have to
retraining.
retraining in whatever they were disciplined for?
Yes.
I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. I just have 1 or 2 more questions. Most of my questions have been asked or already answered. One question is, I see they're broken, the number of complaints and different things are broken down by platoon. Is there any way we can have it broken down by police district? I mean, you guys operate out of district. And that would just be interesting to kind of know which area most of the things are happening.
Yes, we can probably do that.
Okay, if you could get that to us, that'd be great. That was kind of the only question I had that had not been asked. If anyone else has another question, I'll pass it off to them. Okay.
President Williams, go ahead.
Commissioner Carter, do you think the officers are leaving the city of Harrisburg when you were thinking because of the fact that they feel that they're not worth the value of what they're doing? Are they leaving because of higher pay stuff? You're saying the agency that's recruiting them, are they paying a percentage of money that we train the officers? Are they paying that back to the city?
At this time, we have not pursued that. There has been internal discussions on how to go about getting that, recouping that money.
I think there's a resolution that the city council did, and that's when the officers leave the city of Harrisburg before their 5-year period. They recommendation to pay that money for training.
Yes, and I believe that's actually, I don't know, it's another class we can look at. There is a statute.
Yeah, it's in the third, but we also did
Yes,
a resolution.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that was followed through.
understood. And there has been, like I said, internal discussions. It just hasn't got to the point where we've gone after anyone.
How many officers is that? 9, 10? Total of 19. If not, put any of the money for training, provided them.
Not to my knowledge.
The 911 center here in Buckingham County, do you think that the city is better off utilizing that service, or do you think the city should bring that back to the city? Under the auspices of the city?
I think like right now, we should leave it where it is because it'll cost the city a whole lot of money. Dispatchers and things like that. To rebuild the dispatch center, it'll cost millions. Then with the salaries, medical coverage, and things like that. The relationship is getting better with the county. They're doing a better job. So it's just a slow process, you know.
The reason I asked that, because somebody raised it here, is that it takes an officer 2 hours to get to the place. Because the fact that the 911 dispatcher didn't tell me the exact location.
What the county dispatchers do, they take the most serious calls, and they dispatch them out first. Then they would notify the supervisors of the calls, you know, it's constantly, you know, sending out calls, but when a call comes out, you know, if it's not as serious as the first call, that call is just not out.
So we're rated from 1 to 5. From 1 to
The most serious down to the not so serious.
very nice.
Yes, but, you know, people, you know, I will say this, that when we got our own dispatchers, they were more sensitive, they understood, see, people they understood, you know.
And they understood. And
Yes,
see, my concern is just like, you know, like if there is something happening at night. That's the proper situation of the house, who's business actually on site. So I can break one time, and that's the expense. That's not the problem. So that's some of the complaints. I've heard from officers. They're not getting the time, dispatchers, service or location. But they need the correct information.
that could be a little problem. I'm sure you know that when it happens, you know, we report calls and we go to the county, we confront the supervisors about that, you know, it's a work in progress that we're doing with the county, but the intentions that the county has is good. But Madam President, in order for us to bring our own dispatchers to the cost the city a whole lot of money, and I don't know. Door.
And you said something about, you said to Mr. Pages, you want to put information on the website.
Yes,
So will identities be secured?
No.
Ratings or?
no, we're not gonna do that.
And you said also that when Detective Provost makes a decision, well, how does the complainant have a appeal process? Who do they appeal that process? Have a- like, they don't agree with his determination.
The,
Do they know that?
yes, ma'am.
Other question? Thank you.
Yes, and just a last question, sort of in line with Councilwoman's question. So for those that were founded, so if I had another policing personnel from another department, are we then referring that complaint to that department, or is it just?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Yes. Would you be able to share with us who that is so that we can follow up and see what happened on that? Not the individual, but which department it was that those complaints were against?
Yes,
Okay. Would you happen to know that it's for they were unfounded? So were they Capitol Police, State Police, I know, or Susquehanna, other folks may come into the city to assist? Do we know which departments those were?
I can't tell you offhand, but I can find out.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, council members?
good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter.
I'll make sure I give you, information.
Okay, and then, I guess we talked with you, Chair, about, with them about information being posted to the website. Because, and that was new to me that you were gonna do it, I'm glad you are, but I just want to know how that process is gonna work since we have this information here now. It's an IT thing that needs to be taken care of. I know some of this information, at least in last page or two, probably won't be posted since, right, but just in terms of the reports, when they're gonna be posted, that information, be nice to know, so we can share with the residents.
Okay.
All right, thank you, I appreciate you coming. I do have two other requests. One, if you could get us council members a copy of this, that we can post even on our social media, before it's posted on our website. I know sometimes we post things a little faster, so if there's a version that we can post it on it, we can ask not to share this one specifically, but if it's a version we can share with our contacts or online, or just ask, I'd appreciate that. And two, I'd like to formally invite you to October 5th meeting to present the next report. I think that'd be about the time the next report.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Sorry. So are you talking just about the reports here, or are we going back historically to, I know at least for us in terms of Council Bill 8 of 2016 was the bill that had the quarterly reporting requirement. So are we talking about just posting what is available to us here? And then I know I do have the report from 2020 that we received, maybe 2019 report, excuse me, that we received in June of 2020. So we're going to be going back historically at least to 2016 to post the information. I think that's important, that I would, if it's possible, putting it in a different format, receiving, like we receive PDFs of like a laser beach, so that, I know for a lot of folks that have reached out to us, they want to be able to look at the data historically, and they can look at any potential trends that there are. I know just from looking at these reports here, there's been a slight increase in the number of complaints. So I would, if I could, I would like to have it in like an Excel format so that you can, sort, file, and, be able to look at some of those trends. Because if we're seeing certain trends, we're seeing certain demographics that are, that the complaints are being filed against, those kind of things are going to be good for us if we're, trying to figure out where issues are in terms of, wanting to make improvements in training, recruitment, et cetera.
Councilman Majors, if I may, the Right to Know office, which sits in the Law Bureau, is currently working with Internal Affairs and the Commissioner's office on securing some of the historical reports, at least back to 2016, to see what exists. We were given a Right to Know request, requesting everything back to 2011. So we are looking into those. The Law Bureau would need to review those historical reports, just to make sure that they don't contain any identifying information. I don't know what those reports look like.
Right.
The current report, the one that was given to us and shared with all of you tonight, I don't see any reason why that can't be made public, because there is nothing identifying in there, and there's no personal confidential information.
All right, thank you. Like I said, I know there's just, okay, and then will we be concerned about reporting any potential ongoing investigations, right? So I think in 2020, they still said that there was one ongoing that was listed in 2020. Is that still occurring? There's also an ongoing one potentially listed in 2021. So I don't know if that's the same investigation or just those are two.
And the Law Bureau will work with the police department to ensure that all information is protected that needs to be protected.
Okay, and then in terms of whatever that final adjudication is for an ongoing investigation, is that then changed or, highlighted asterisk moving forward, right? So if we got the 2020 one that says there was an ongoing one, we received that in 2021, when will we know outcome of that investigation? Or how is that going to be? It'll be 1 day. And they reported, if I'm making sense.
Yes, have to defer to the commissioner and his staff to see how they wanna handle that reporting.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, if that's everything, I'll pass it back to President Williams. Thank you again, Commissioner Carter.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I'm gonna pass it on to you, a report on the students.
Yes, I can do that now. So we are proud to announce that we have finished the interviews and have made offers to 7 CSA positions, so 7 candidates. So I believe all of them have accepted those positions and are going through the background process. So hopefully by July 26th, we'll be able to get them to start their training process and get them out on the streets to help citizens as soon as possible. This is just a disclaimer or a note that these are not officers, these are community service aides. They'll be working to help with communication between the police department and the community, as well as working in the liaison with the community. So I'm happy to announce that. President Williams, I'll also announce that we will be looking to release application for our citizen advisory board next week. Those applications will be public. They should be put on our city website as well. The process would then look like people being able to apply throughout the summer and then coming back from our IAs, we'll be looking to start interviews. All of the city council members will be given a copy of all the applications. And then from that point, we'll be able to make nominations, do the interviews, and then people will want to fill the position.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Green. We now move on to budget and finance committee. Chair.
Thank you. We get a discussion tonight with resolution 47 coming through.
Yeah, resolution 47 of 2021 is a resolution approving an updated base plan document adoption agreement and related amendments for the firefighter retirement system with the Pennsylvania municipal retirement system.
Lucky guy, I actually discussed this one.
Good afternoon, Councilman Hallett, and if I could suggest, if we could discuss resolutions 47 and 48 at the same time, they are almost identical.
Okay, that's good. Why don't we read that one directly to Ms. McCurdy?
Sure, resolution 48 of 2021 is a resolution approving an updated base plan document adoption agreement and related amendments for the non-uniform municipal employees retirement system with Pennsylvania municipal retirement system.
Thank you. So this is, these two resolutions are the culmination of a 2-year process for the city at this point, and actually a longer process for the Pennsylvania municipal retirement system. PMRS runs the pensions for both firefighters and then ASPE. Sometime before 2019, they started the process of updating statewide, not just for Harrisburg, their base plan documents and the form of their contracts. So the base plan document, which is the first exhibit to both of these resolutions in front of you, is the result of that update. There's an attached new contract after that and some amendments. And what this does is simply restates in a more modern form and a form that's compliant with IRS requirements, the existing pension agreement we have with PMRS. There is no change to the terms of the agreement. It does not change benefits for any employees. You may also remember that historically, the city has adopted these agreements with PMRS by ordinance instead of resolution, and resolutions do indicate that if passed, the intention would be to bring down a technical amendment repealing the 2 currently existing ordinances. The reason for the switch from ordinance to resolution is that the new form of the contract that PMRS is requiring us to enter into is almost impossible to enter into our ordinances, our codified ordinances. If you have looked through this, there's a lot of boxes and check marks, and it's also several hundred pages long, and we thought that it would be more comprehensible as an ordinance that in no way affects the agreement, the validity of the agreement. We're perfectly able to do it both ways. I believe that it had been done as an ordinance solely because it had always been done that way going into the past. So this is, both of these are sort of technical recodifications of existing agreements that make no changes to the benefits and actually help bring PMRS and therefore our pension plans into compliance with higher standards.
So I know you said it twice, but I think it's important to reiterate, because I think there was some concern among the employees just to that, when they saw this pop up, thinking what changes were happening. So really, from a day-to-day, how employees would expect their retirement pensions to take place as things have changed, what their initial expectations were.
They will not see any difference in their day-to-day lives. There's also a representative from PMRS here, and she may be able to provide a little bit more detail on that, if you would like her to speak to that.
Sure, come on now.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Make sure that buttons.
Yes.
It's just taking me to the record as well.
I am Heather Tyler, the Chief Programs Officer of the Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement System. And I can confirm that all of this does is put into a new form of benefits that already exists. There are no substantive changes.
And that's, I think that's just important. I know that, I think when it came up, there was some concern that what we're discussing it, so it's good.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of anything else, is there anything else you think that would be important to communicate, particularly to our rank and file employees, work for the city, just so they're aware of?
I actually had a great conversation with some on my way in this morning. First, we are pleased to be able to serve you and city employees who live here and care about them. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. Second, to be able to restate that PMRS has gone through some changes and some staffing changes and COVID and all those sorts of things, that we are ready. I think employees have felt separated from some of their benefits in their workplace recently, that we are happy to come back and do retirement seminars again, we're happy to do educational series, all of those things. So we actually exchanged numbers and we'll start doing those sorts of things as well, but we are more than happy to be back after this.
Thank you for being here. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for questions. I'll start actually to my right. It's kind of nice to be back in the data, so I can not really think of who everybody's sitting in. Beginning with Councilmember Daniels.
So just confirming, this doesn't have any effect on the substantive benefits, none of the OPEB benefits, we don't have to make any later calculations later on in terms of the value.
No, this purely restates the existing agreement in a new form. And the reason this was a 2-year process is we spent a long time going through it to ensure that it hadn't accidentally said anything incorrectly.
And does this then have to be added as like some kind of appendix that is like part of the agreement, or is once this is approved, that's sufficient?
That's correct. And our goal, we're not there yet. So currently these are done by ordinance, so they're available on the city website and through e-codes. And as resolutions, they'll also be available. We've been looking for a way to make them easily available to employees somewhere on the city's website and retirees as well.
And we are a state agency and documents are public documents, so that's something that we can also share.
And this is unrelated to but from my understanding, if employees have a question about their post-retirement benefits, they can contact your.
Absolutely, they can follow or email us, yes.
Councilmember Beatrice.
No questions. A couple of questions I was going to ask were already provided, so as long as there's no material changes, I have no additional questions. Thank you for being here.
I don't have any questions, I just have a statement. I think it's good if we can bring both collective parties together, just indicate to me what this actually means, because there's some employees who don't understand what they're doing.
So that's interesting. One of the things we also talked about is we create summaries. Because we understand the legal is confusing. Once this is adopted and the new plan agreement is in place, you get a summary that looks like this, that puts it in the plan question. But we are happy to do that.
Firecrackers are next, you mean?
Yes, you,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And there,
I think you need to put it in there.
yes, absolutely.
Thank you, that's all right.
Councilmember.
No question for me, thanks. Do appreciate the summaries that are so quick to understand.
Great, thank you.
I don't have any questions on this, thank you.
Councilmember Bowers.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you both. That was easier than I thought it was going to be. Very simple.
I did just want to make one other note. The only reason we didn't bring down technical repealers of the ordinances is on the off chance that it took us a lot longer to get signatures after these were passed. We didn't want those to go into effect before all the new agreements were signed. So once they're signed, we'll bring them down. I anticipate that being hopefully right after the return from summer recess, but it may take a little longer than that because a lot of people have to sign both documents.
All right. Oh yeah, we've done the correct notification.
I believe so. I will get that to you. It also does not change any of their benefits, so. But
It's not gonna change anything, I just think you should be. aware
Yes.
that voting should be notified that this is what you're doing. Congratulations.
thank you.
We're going to go resolution 47 and 41 next Tuesday. And up for discussion next is resolution 50 of 2021. Clerk, would you like to read that into record?
Resolution 50 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the city to negotiate and enter into agreements with 48 auctions and appraisals in the estate of Stephen R. Reed to dispose of certain artifacts, objects, and documents by auction.
So I guess to begin, this is probably a direct offshoot of last week. Correct?
I wasn't here last week,
Oh.
it passed.
I think the resolution required to the remnants of the estate. So
Okay.
yeah. But go ahead. You want to give a summary or?
Sure, so this agreement with 48 auctions would be to finally bring an end to a long-standing issue, outstanding issue with the city. The Attorney General's office has approximately 1,500 artifacts in their possession in an undisclosed location, the ownership of which is under dispute. Whether they belong to the estate of Stephen Reed or do they belong to the city of Harrisburg. The proposal is to enter into an agreement with the estate, which we've been in contact with them, and they agree to this, to simply have 48 auctions keep possession of all of those artifacts from the Attorney General's office, auction them off, and the city and the estate will split the proceeds evenly.
City and the estate.
And the estates.
So that's
Yeah.
what the city and the state of
No,
mind.
and the estates.
They're not getting it.
No, not the state.
They're the one party.
There's been various times where some of these items have been appraised. We're not talking millions of dollars, we're talking a couple $100,000. Obviously, depending on what people bid on the items. The agreement in front of you has 48 auctions receiving 20% of the proceeds. And then the city and the state would split the rest. That was negotiated down from an original 35%. Along with that, 48 auctions will pick up and transport the artifacts from the agent's location to their location, saving us costs on storage. And then obviously 48 charges a buyer's premium to those who bid on the items. Mr. Cordier is here if you have any questions of him on his experience, his company, or what the auction process looked like.
Just more process question. So what type of time will we be looking at once, say this is approved next week and we enter it's officially?
This is on, okay, great. My name is David Cordier, I'm the owner of Cordier Auctions, we're located at 1500 Paxton Street, Harrisburg. We've been there for close to 15 years. Yes, the process, the material could be picked up as early as the end of this month. And then we probably would have the auction within 30 days after that.
There are a series of stipulations, agreements that the city does need to sign with the estate as well as the AG's office. And then once those are signed, a date would be set for Mr. Cordier and his team to pick up the artifacts. We would have a city team there overseeing that transportation. And when the artifacts get to Mr. Cordier's location, we will do a complete inventory of all the artifacts. Currently, the artifacts are on pallets and they are shrink wrapped. We're not allowed to open them until they are out of the AG's position. But we have identified a team of 4 of city employees that will go. They consist of our historic preservationist, the law bureau secretary, a few other people who will take care of the inventory. City council would then be provided with a full inventory of all the documents.
That's just it, because we actually don't know. I remember when the discussion about the agent took, possession of it, and there was a lot that was in question that we had no idea.
Yes. Also, just to be clear, so also in the AG's possession are city records. Those records will not be part of the auction, obviously. They will come back to the city. And there are some items that it's undisputed that the city owns, which is some sports memorabilia. And Mr. Cordier would auction those off as well, but those proceeds would strictly be for the city.
I'll open up to questions from my colleagues during the matters.
Thank you. I think many of my questions have been answered during overview, so thank you. But if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your background, your company, I think that might be helpful for those that aren't familiar with it.
Sure. Again, my name is David Cordier. I'm the owner of Cordier Auctions. I had several different careers actually, but one of them was I was an antique dealer for about 30 years in the Harrisburg area and lived on the West Shore and did shows all over the country, antique shows. And about 15 years ago, I got into the auction business. And we originally were holding our auctions in Camp Hill in the municipal building or Radisson Ballroom for high-end auctions. And we looked around for an appropriate spot to locate our auction house. And we ended up at 1500 Paxton Street. Used to be the old UGI building. It's now was the Central Penn Business Journal building. We leased the back of that space. We have 12,000 square feet. We have 15 employees, full-time employees, and about 10 regular part-time people that work for us. In 2019, we held 80 auctions. We sell real estate, fine and decorative arts, firearms and militaria. We are licensed to sell firearms at auction, firearms and militaria, to antique toys, trains, and pretty much vehicles, real estate. We're considered a general service auction company. So, so that's a little bit about that. I have a graduate degree from Penn State. I also work closely actually with the Attorney General's office. I was the company that they had appraised this material when they took possession of it many years ago, quite a few years ago. And we're known all over the country. We sell things to people. All of our auctions are online. So we're well known. We have about 17,000 people on our email list. We have 8,000 people that follow all of our auctions. So we're well established, well respected, trusted, and kind of the overview. I could talk for hours, but I don't think you want to hear all the details. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Green.
I don't have any questions. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Mann.
No questions for me. My parents are very familiar with your outfit. They're quite frequently. They got into antiquing as they entered retirement, and they swear they're going to sell stuff, but they. They're big fans.
That's something that you might have to.
I wouldn't be shocked if they bought some stuff.
Council President.
Thank you for coming. So you were able to identify out of the 1,500 artifacts, you were able to identify what belongs to the city and what belongs to the state. Are you going to be doing that?
No. So this is a compromise between us and the estate, so that process will not happen. If we were to go down the road of identifying what belonged to who, we would be in court. We would be hiring experts, we would have hearings. It would cost the city quite a bit of money. We thought this would be the most elegant solution to an inelegant problem and to put past in the past.
One reason I asked that is because of my assumption, I was concerned about, what belongs to.
Yes.
The one thing I could add is that the Attorney General's office does have inventory of all material. So that would be coming to our location, folks from the city there, folks from the Attorney General's office, and we would probably be doing a lot of the actual checking off, and so we wouldn't be already was. So,
Thank you.
I guess for, Ms. Paula, in terms of the materials that you said were all owned by the city, that there's no dispute, are they still being, is that number being put into the overall number, or are they going to be separated out in terms of the split? So 48 still receive, they receive 10% of that, or they receive 20% of the proceeds in terms of just those members that we know are the city.
So there's actually two agreements in front of you. One is with the city and 48 auctions. The second is the city, the estate, and 48 auctions. So the items that are undisputedly owned by the city are under a separate agreement, but it's still a 20% fee that goes to 48 auctions.
Okay. All right. And then,
and that material, I'm not gonna interrupt, that material is identified,
okay,
so we'll know what that is.
so that'll be, we'll know what that is, and then we'll go through the rest of the other inventory that, the Attorney General's office, has in their possession. I think I may have one additional question, but it's slipping my mind right now, so I might not.
You have my contact information there, so if you want to call or email, just let me do that. And
So the moment all of the documents are signed, we expect to have the auctions happen in 30 days.
well, once the documents are signed, we have to coordinate with the city folks and the Attorney General's folks to go and pick the material up, which is on the outskirts of Harrisburg. We did go look at that. It's about 40 to 42 pallets of material. So once we get that back and get it out, we get inventory, then from there we're going to try to coordinate it that once we get it, get inventory, then we can start processing it for the auction. It usually takes from that point about 30 days to actually have the auction. But we prefer not to have that much material in our auction house just stored. We could do that, but that's not the best.
Are there in your industry, are there better times of the year to have auctions, or is it?
But you know, that's the question that all auctioneers get all the time. And there really is no right answer to that. My belief is that if you have something of value that people want to compete for, they will buy it any time. There are actually auctions on Christmas Day. People have auctions on Christmas Day. So I think that, you know, the answer is I don't believe that to be accurate.
And do we know who the beneficiaries of the real estate are?
I do not. I'm sure we can find that information out for you, and I can provide that to you, but right for sitting here, I don't know.
It's his sister.
This is. I do have one question. We received a letter.
That's a council just remember this question.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I defer. Okay, thank you, Mr. Years ago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we received documentation from the reservation and some of the artifacts belong. So has that, is there any truth to that? If they were wanting to come to see Harrisburg claim those rights?
I don't believe that there's ever been a real determination. I know that the city had received letters in the past that
Yeah, we
were
did,
from,
we did.
I would say that were bogus letters. But no, there has never been an actual formal claim or anything to my knowledge against the city.
Mr. Majors.
Just the last question I have. So with this, the potential for this auction, does this put to bed all of the memorabilia, artifacts, et cetera, that were in the possessions? I know this has been going on for years. I just want to make sure that we're not aware of anything else that we have to.
This will take care of everything that's in the AG's possession.
Okay.
I know the city still is in possession of its own artifacts, and they're still down there, and what happens with those, who knows? But yes, as far as the disputed items that were seized as part of Stephen Reed's criminal case, we'll put this to them.
Okay, thank you.
That, the discussion on resolution 15, put that on the agenda for next Tuesday. And that concludes the budget and finance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move on to administration committee, which is activity. Trustee, please read the resolution 29, into your record, please.
Resolution 49 of 2021 is a resolution approving the appointment of David West as Director of Public Works.
Good evening, Mr. Weston. Sure.
Madam President, and Honorable Councilman.
Most of us up here know Mr. Weston. That's Park Public Works. Just give the public an overview of what you're doing. So in that.
From the beginning,
Oh, not from the beginning, just. Sure. I'm trying to go back to 1920.
just for you, I've worked in various departments of public works and who actually through all departments of public works at some point or another. Through sanitation, highway division, BMC division, demolition specialist, supervisor of highway and sanitation, during the Mayor Thompson and was mayor and everyone started to build, there were no supervisors and it's almost, look, we all had to be here. And just the supervisor, because there was no one there. And till after that happened, the faculty became mayor and became the deputy director and had a vision, took the vision to some of the expansion of departments that are capable of expanding. And was believed in on to be able to take on tasks. So the director, Aaron Johnson, retired.
I sure you know you have the skill set and the experience of the position. I'm just going to ask them to my husband if we have questions. Start with Ms. Phelps.
Thank you, President Williams. Good evening. I just have maybe one question relative to any goals you see appointed as the Director of Public Works. What are some goals that you expect potentially be wrong?
Well, the theme that we have, going to the next level. And Public Works have always focused on the point to getting the task done. And whatever way that we had to accomplish the task, that's what we did. So the next level that I'm talking about is to, and within the Public Works Department, you have sanitation department, highway department, and this department, BMC department. And what we do is, currently we integrate the departments to complete the task. What I would like to do is have the departments within the department be self-sufficient, self-reliant to be able to withstand its own self within the department, with the separation of sanitation department and highway department. So we can continue to accomplish the goals that needs to be accomplished as far as the potholes, whatever paving that we need to do. You know, one of the tasks that, because we integrated together to accomplish the task, some tasks were left to be, which were the pothole situation. So we want to separate those departments. We want sanitation to be within itself. We want highway to be within itself. We want demolition to be within itself. It's all part of public works, but those departments need to stand on their own. And that's the goal of going to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Ms. Green?
I don't have any questions for you. I've had the opportunity to work with you, actually, at an internship in public works, and it was great to get to know you. So I know that you'd be great in this role. I look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you for taking the time to want to take this position. Thank you.
Mr. Madison?
But how are you?
Good.
I'm familiar with you and your work. Just had a quick question in terms of the department. What is it overall do you think the department does well? In terms of like, what do you in terms of achieving goals? Sort of a broad overview. How do you feel the department is performing in accomplishing these goals?
I believe the department can excel to another level. We have the passion for what we do. We just continue to instill the passion into the employees of each department. And when I'm doing interviews, our main topic is passion. If you don't have the passion for what you do, then you're coming to work just to have a job. And City of Harrisburg, our residents are top priority. And we have to have the passion because we're above the rest. That's number one. We're above the rest. So we continue to get better. There's always room to continue to grow and get better. And that's what we do.
Follow-up question, what do you think are some of those things we can improve on in the department?
Again, the department to stand within itself. You know, where we have to go to the next level of working harder. And also accomplishing the goals that we need to accomplish as far as like this year. We do our system, through our new pothole system to public works. We have 230 call-ins from residents and different entities. And we have accomplished 135 of those 230. And it's not, when you get a call, you don't get a call about one pothole, it's one instance, but it could be 10 potholes down the street. So it's not just one job. So that's what we continue to do. So in the separation of the highway department with the sanitation department, you should be able to accomplish the goals that we need to accomplish. That's part of most of it.
Glad you touched on potholes, those guys. They're pretty well, so that's all, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Mr. Allen?
I don't have any questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Majors?
Yes, and Mr. West, how are you, sir? Good. So it's one of the first question I was going to ask was regarding the potholes. So mentioned about how much has been completed. So just trying to understand how that process works. So I know we have the website, which is good and tracking it. So when you receive it, how does that process look like? So we receive it today. How quickly are we looking to address that pothole to the extent everything?
Maybe ask a question. We have created a system, spreadsheet system, which we do it, we divide whatever calls that we receive. We divide the calls from crash misses, cyclists, potholes. They're divided into those categories. So we create a spreadsheet to attack the spreadsheet through those different categories, through those different departments, and through the system that we have created. We have come up to the point that 95% of the public requests has been resolved within 24 hours. With this system that we have.
Thank you. And then in terms of working with the city engineers, I know we're all very cognizant of our streets and a lot of them need to be done. So we're fixing the potholes, but are you working with engineering on, are we like triage until we say, hey, this street has suspended, consider repaving, or is that spreadsheet system being communicated with engineering so we can try to triage streets to the best that we can?
Yes, we communicate with engineering, and they have sent us a list of roads that they have contracted out. So we know what not to touch because what they send us, we don't do. We have another list that we attack, so we can agree, come within accomplishing the task of from both sides of the city,
Okay.
so we can keep it.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest concerns we all hear about is the legal document. I know we have folks that are on the enforcement side. So if you talk to us a little bit about process for making those complaints and where we stand right now in terms of being able to go after any folks that are dumping illegally in the city.
Yes, that's one of the points of going to the next level of having the departments within public works stand on their own, because one of the tasks that we have as far as the illegal dumping is we have 2 enforcement officers. And part of the illegal dumping, we have to use part of our highway department. So one of my goals is to try to hire another enforcement officer, preferably bilingual, because we have our officers who do not understand Spanish and other language that could help us. Also, what we would like to do with this enforcement officer would be to have them to have a CDL. Because again, we will not have to use part of another department. That department can stand on its own and put out every day to accomplish the task that's at hand. We also deal with other nonprofit organizations, and they help also, like with actually with Wild Heart Ministries. And we do Wild Heart Ministries, Community Action, OIC, YMCA, Midtown Association, and Building Association. And the meetings that we have with those entities, we all try to come up with solutions. Like they have community cleanups that we clean up to try to clean up the community throughout the entire city. So that's all going forward. Well, we will continue to be able to not only try to catch the culprits that's doing the illegal dumping, we also will have these help us clean up all the illegal dumping that's being put out there. We also are in the process of purchasing 12 cameras that we can place around the city that are not visible. We had 3 cameras. 1 camera went down. So we were able to order through IT a dozen cameras. We put throughout, we call them hotspots. And we put them throughout the hotspots for from 15 to 30 days. And then we just move them around the city as other hotspots are created. And cameras are much more up to date than the older versions that we had. It's going to help us tremendously. They're being purchased as we speak.
Okay, thank you. That's one of my questions was guys. So is there anything else outside the cameras that you think would need to be able to help us continue to deal with illegal dumping in the city?
More conversation with the community, to continue to let them know that it's more of them than it is us as far as public works goes. But as a community, it's more of us than them. So if coming together, there will be no names mentioned, you'll be anonymous. If we can gain some type of information, we are actually corresponding with Commissioner and Lake that they're going to help us with accomplishing these tasks as far as we accomplish and working together.
And that's probably my last question now, so I want to make sure about our opportunity. In terms of the, we know that we've gone after some of the folks that have owed us, significant amounts of past due bills. Do you have any update on, us being able to address some of our more higher, I guess, would have larger arrearages with public works and sanitation in terms of bills that are due to the city, and how is having the collections officer working out for the department.
Councilor Majors, so the collections attorney is, working constantly with Public Works, primarily with Rosemary Nye and Maria Case. She is constantly sending out notices to delinquent property owners, and we're not talking delinquent property owners, primarily just commercial properties. They seem to have the biggest, arrearages to the city. For 2021, I know she has collected, just by, sending out letters, working on payment plans. She's brought in close to $300,000 to date for 2021. She is also leaning properties. When they don't respond to letters after a certain date, I think she's doing 30, 60, 90-day notices. And if there's no response, it's a lien. And she has been actively leaning properties. And I can get you, more figures if you need them, but it does seem to be a good working relationship between her and the public works staff.
Thank you. We have some additional development. Councilwoman Williams. Thank you.
Daniels. Service.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We're now moving on to Building and Housing Committee. Councilwoman Bowers.
Thank you, President Williams. Before we begin the work of the Building and Housing Committee, I just wanted to take a moment to thank my colleagues for your thoughts, prayers, and general concern as I think you might be able to process with my ankle. So thank you, everyone. Mr. Petrowski, if you could please read Resolution 51 of 2021 into the record, please.
Resolution 51 of 2021 is a resolution of the council of the city of Harrisburg to approve the adoption of updated historic district design and preservation guidelines.
Thank you. So Isaac, does any or no?
Pretty sure not
It's
mine.
on Zoom. Okay, please.
Good evening, council. It's a pleasure to be back. So the existing historic district guidelines were drafted and adopted in 2009, and since then, a lot has changed. They've become very outdated. They're very broad and non-directional. They provide little technical assistance to homeowners, residents, tenants, and contractors and landlords of our municipal historic districts in regards to preserving, repairing, and replacing in kind historic materials of these of our historic building stock. The purpose of the new guidelines is to provide more comprehensive information regarding the city's local history, the history of our architecture, as well as the comprehensive and specific guidelines regarding the appropriate maintenance, rehabilitation, and improvements that preserve and enhance the character of our municipal historic districts and historic buildings and neighborhoods throughout the city. So the manual serves a variety of users and for a variety of different ways. So it is overall, it's a complete overhaul of the existing historic district guidelines. Has a lot more information in regards to how to address certain preservation issues from wood, masonry, windows, siding, and roofing, metal, all the above. But also the new document is easy to navigate, it's easy to interpret, and we in the planning bureau attempted to remove all the architectural jargon that a lot of people that don't work in the field of preservation every day don't particularly interpret on a daily basis. So the new guidelines will or a tool and a resource for not just those who own property in municipal historic districts, but citywide who are passionate about preserving the character and integrity of our historic neighborhoods. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have about the new document. It's been a very passionate and long-term project of ours in the planning bureau. So I'd like to say that we are very proud of this, and I hope that this will be a resource in the years for all residents of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question before I open the floor to my colleagues. I know that 2 virtual public discussions were held in March. So I was curious to know if you received any feedback. I did participate in both of those, but I wondered if anyone submitted any written comments.
So we received very few comments in regards to the virtual meetings that occurred in March. Nothing substantial, just grammatical errors in the document and formatting issues and word choice, nothing substantial per se. So those are the really only few comments that I received during the virtual meetings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will begin with Councilwoman Green. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. I don't have any questions on that.
Thanks. Councilman Madison,
No question.
President Williams,
No questions.
Vice President Allen.
My only real question, at times, which when it comes back to us, when we're not happy with the outcome of decisions that have been made at heart, it seems like historically there have been a lot of confusion. I know you mentioned that that's something you want to address. The other thing I wanted to find out from your perspective is, does this offer any additional kind of flexibility within the guidelines? Because I think I'm trying to think, this 2 years ago, a discussion on windows. And it was actually a really enlightening kind of conversation for us to go through. And I think collectively we learned a lot about what could be considered something that would be workable within the context of what was happening.
Yeah, that's a great question. In general, in historic preservation, as many of you may be aware, building products are changing every month, and products of yesteryear are becoming obsolete. So it's our job to be educated on what these products provide, what their affordability is, and their appropriateness for their use in historic buildings, and also keeping in mind the context of the project and its surroundings and built environment as well. So the new guidelines do have a bit more flexibility in terms of what is an in-kind replacement. And so, for example, windows, we still administratively approve what was historically there, obviously. We also allow for wood composite materials to be used, which is fairly new type of material in the last but that material is becoming more widespread, is becoming more available. Cost is always an issue. So that's why as a historic preservation specialist, I always urge the repair of existing historic materials. A, it's more cost effective. B, you're preserving the historic integrity of building materials that are already installed in the house. And C, it's environmentally conscious, not manufacturing materials and shipping them, installing them, when in reality, the existing materials typically here. So cost is always an issue, and that's why I emphasize repair. We live in a historic city, and it's a character that can't be replicated anywhere. That's why people love our neighborhoods. You won't get that feeling of the texture of old brick and old windows, and weightiness of windows, construction. So that's why I really emphasize the repair of these materials over replacement. And to your point of affordability, and flexibility rather of new materials. The HARB is becoming more progressive in terms of reviewing different materials and how they are installed and contextual and how appropriate they are in context of the building and historic materials. So in general, the HARB is becoming more progressive in terms of what is appropriate in our historic neighborhoods. So yeah, that's a whole ball field of conversation, but overall, I think we're headed in the right direction.
No, and I appreciate it too, and I think I was, when I started, by prefacing and saying, I love the historic university. I mean, it's one of the things that drew me in when I was a college graduate. It's kept me here. It's just the thing since I came to college. But here's but one of the things I've always been, you know, this, I think we forget sometimes how beautiful our city is because we're living in everything. But when I have friends who come visit, particularly from the Midwest and the South, that doesn't have the history that we have, they're amazed how many museums you can walk through and see just kind of the living history, the decades that existed from the time our city was founded to where we're now. And I think it's kind of cool when people see it for the first time and recognize just how beautiful it is. And even I think it was in the middle of COVID, the friends that stopped in from Nashville, and like we couldn't see each other inside, but we took a walking tour in like 20-degree January weather to see the city, and they loved it. But so I think it's always important to highlight just the historical integrity and maintaining that over time. So I applaud the efforts that collective between the department and art teams. That is all that I have.
Thank you. Councilman Majors.
Yes, thank you. And I think that conversation was one of the ones that I definitely want to bring up, because I know that those conversations, and not just all windows, but ensuring that there is some flexibility in replacement just because of the change in materials. With respect to other neighborhoods that potentially could be listed, are we pursuing other neighborhoods? We have a lot of historic neighborhoods in Harrisburg. I know some are, are we looking at that? What's that process that we would have to undertake for some of the other neighborhoods in Harrisburg to potentially listed?
Yeah. So formulating a municipal historic district usually has to start with a grassroots movement. The neighborhoods should want to have a municipal district. Usually there are two sides of the coin. In general, a part of the neighborhood doesn't want municipal designation. They don't want oversight of alterations on their buildings. On the other hand, they also want to preserve the historical integrity of the properties, streetscape facades, streetscape continuity, and retain property value. Of course, building that's physically altered to the point has to have any integrity, then it impacts the streetscape and impacts the property value of the entire street potentially. So anyway, the formulation of a municipal historic district should start from the citizens who live there, and they can move to establish boundaries of the municipal historic district, which would then can be certified by the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, state preservation office, as well as SHPO. And yeah, and then proposal moves to the planning bureau and do a site visit evaluation for with the state SHPO office, and then municipal designation of the there hasn't been a new historic district in quite some time. I think the most recent one, probably conservation overlay district, Mount Pleasant. But it's a big move because it impacts residents that live there now, and so I of course advocate for historic preservation everywhere, but it's important to evaluate where that neighborhood was going in the future, and how that neighborhood is planned for development, for progress, growth. So it's a lot of questions in terms of how we want to see the city in the future, long-term, holistic plan. So to answer your other question, as of now, the Academy Manor eligible National Historic District, we are working to get that listed on the National Register of Historic Places, as it is an example of early 20th century suburban, urban planning of the 20s. That's in terms of architecture and overall planning up in that area. So there are plans to nominate a national historic districts, but at the moment there aren't any movements in terms of developing new municipal historic districts.
Okay, and just thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilwoman Daniels.
Yeah, so, is there, in addition to this, kind of a simpler document that's used for the people who actually do the repair work?
So this document is, we try to make it as simple as possible. So this is the guideline. So if you look through the guidelines, there's a table of contents, and if a contractor says, oh, I'm replacing windows, they can flip to the Windows chapter, and that's the chapter that's relevant to them. So we developed this as a field guide kind of. So if you have it on your vehicle or in your house, you can reference each individual chapter separately. You don't have to read the entire document to understand what to do with that particular aspect that you're trying to repair or replace. I don't know if I answered your question. I apologize.
I guess the answer is no, because this is the document. I would recommend at some point for you guys to work on something that the actual people who are doing the work can really much more needs, because I know a lot of times people do get intimidated by reading and they're like, I'm good at, break my neck, I'm not good at this kind of thing. So I think that would be really useful. And the other thing, one of the things that's always kind of an issue is that you guys to some degree, but we have a lot of industry, so sometimes people are caught off guard by what's in public right of way and what's visible from the public right of way. So I'm not sure what the best of dealing with that is, because Paper Street is a public right of way. At the same time, nobody's seeing or driving through there. That's Paper Street.
Yeah.
So how do y'all think about that process?
So internally, so if you say paper streets are technically rights of way, but in I guess how I see it is, internally I don't review paper streets as right of ways, because publicly used by pedestrians, cars, neighborhoods, and not used as part of the streetscape experience from residents, well, primarily visitors, but residents use them for access to backyards and things like that. So, in my experience, my recommendations, paper streets are not considered right of ways. In my reviews of school preservation, because by anybody but the properties. So I review school preservation operations from primary streets, secondary streets, sidewalks, and anything that's from those rights of ways. So this is an issue that we deal with playing here all the time. What's visible from public right of way? I'm sure some individuals have gone before and we've had this conversation. So it's always difficult to develop what the line between visibility and. So, to answer your question, paper streets, in my opinion, aren't rights of ways in terms of public access. You know what I'm saying? They're obsolete, historically obsolete.
Is there, that would be more clearly articulated this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I
And
think.
that's a good point, yeah, so I can modify, add, I can do that, I'll make sure that'll happen, I appreciate that, because that's something that the planning bureau in general deals with all the time. We have a lot of neighborhood disputes in regards to paper alleys, or grocery alleys, and who owns them, what do we do with them, maintain them, things like that, so that's a larger conversation from planning and things like that. But yes, I can clarify that a bit more when you talk about it.
Thank you. Are there any other additional questions? Thank you very much for your time this evening. Seeing none, I would ask that resolution 51 please be added to our next legislative session agenda. Next, we have resolution 52, 2021. Mr. Petrosky, please read that into the record.
Resolution 52 of 2021 is a resolution approving the disposal and destruction of certain personal property owned by the city of Harrisburg, which is exhausted its useful life for city operations, does nominal value, no value, or less value than disposal costs.
Thank you. Good evening. You could please provide an overview of some of the equipment that will be disposed of.
Sure. Hi, I'm Steve Summerall, Deputy Director of IT. Still in Steve for your This is all antique gear, I'm going to say it that way, and gear that is no longer working. There's at least 30% that is actually broken. And their value is higher than replacement value, so the additional gear is past its useful life, past the commercial useful life to repair or replace or benefit the employee. That includes our laptops, desktops, printers, scanners, speakers, telephone systems.
Okay, thank you. We'll begin with Councilwoman Daniels. Do you have any questions? Okay, Councilman Madsen, I'm sorry, Megan.
Just for another again, yeah, it looks like all that stuff is.
Mhm.
Okay, no questions.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Allen.
I have no questions.
Okay, President Williams.
No questions, thank you.
Welcome, thank you. Now, Councilman Madsen.
No question, thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing no questions. Thank you for your time. I've asked that resolution 52 of 2021 be added to our legislative session agenda. Thank you. This concludes the work of the Building and Housing Committee.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bowers. Also, Mr. Johnson, resolution 49, please give that to the work session. Moving on to Community Economic Development Committee. Now we'll turn it over to Mr. Johnson. Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, President Williams. Mr. Petrosky, resolution 2021, Mr. Director.
We have resolution 53 of 2021 is a resolution approving a preliminary and final land development plan to establish a tiny home village for homeless veterans along the community center and associated site improvements at 1103 South Front Street.
The representative for the applicant.
Hello, my name is Tom Zimmerman, President of the Veterans Outreach in Pennsylvania. I have our engineering firm, Christine Hunter, with us, and also our legal department.
Bruce Wood. Mr. Knight.
Good evening, city council members. Again, the application here tonight for city council is a continuation of one that you've already dealt with. I believe back in May, a subdivision for the property. So that was kind of a middle step in this overall project. Zoning relief for the proposed development and the use. After that, they followed up with the subdivision, which council did review and approve. And now they're here before you with the actual land development plan. And so this proposal will stay the same since the very beginning. Changes to the actual proposal. They will be constructing a tiny home community consisting of 15 units for veterans, and then approximately 6,600 square foot community center, which will serve as a common area. Each of the proposed tiny home units will be 68 square feet. The project will also involve construction of an access drive, parking, emergency access drive, and utilities. The applicant is also asking for 4 waivers from the solid regulations. So the review of this case was very similar to the review of the other two, the zoning relief and the subdivision application. So the conditions adopted by the planning commission, their review are similar to those. All easement agreements for access to lot 1 to lot 2, by the planning bureau, and in their response to the city and county's review of their applications, applicants did indicate that they will be providing that prior to recordation of the subdivision plans, which we have here in the office a little earlier today. And then the applicant will submit a floodplain development permit application, post fence across the northern property line of the parcel, as well as for any other permanent installations added as part of the project. There are, they'll have the fence will have a footprint, floodplain kind of on either side, on the side of the parcel. And if there's any other aspects of the project in the special flood hazard area, the applicant would be. And then the planning commission and the bureau recommends that city council approve the request for the following reasons. The proposed project will meet a critical need of homeless individuals and specifically targeted group of veterans who are disproportionately represented in the homeless population. It will provide quality, accessible units that improve the standard of living. Will introduce a unique housing approach that may be a template for future projects. And given the relatively isolated nature of the project, residents of the facility will be able to seek the treatment they require and personal growth and call it supportive environment. That,
Councilman Manson, if I just may, just a quick clarification, because it was mentioned that there were 4 SALDO waivers that they were requesting. When the land development plan came in, it did request 4 SALDO waivers, but on further inspection, actually one of the waivers is from our stormwater management ordinance. We no longer own or control the MS4 permit that is under CRW. And CRW gave their comments just last week. So one of the conditions of the waiver for stormwater management is that CRW is okay with it. I have been in contact with Attorney Grossman on this one, which I believe is a fairly minor issue. And I think we're on the same page, but I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, applicant, anything we'd like to add? Not at this time. I know previously when we discussed land development project in general, flooding came up. I know that the project is outside of floodplain, but you know, there could be some stuff flooding if there's some severe weather. Could you, I know the engineers here, could you touch on that a little bit, or the plans if there were severe weather and flooding in that area?
All of the buildings are several feet above flood elevation. There is an access drive, the main access drive, there's a portion of that that doesn't approach from that, but we are proposing an emergency access drive, and that is wholly outside of that. So they do have a means of leaving the site if they should be.
The other question I had is when you start taking folks into consideration for household living opportunity for local Harrisburg veterans.
When, I'm sorry, when you're, I'm assuming when the homes are built.
Correct.
How, can you talk about the process of building the homes and delivering opportunities for Harrisburg veterans?
Yes, there will be a policies and procedures that I'm currently working on now with our committees. There'll be a policy that we work with that's already existing in the state of Pennsylvania, as well as cash, the temporary coalition of homelessness. Our board members work very closely with the homeless population in Dauphin County, particularly Harrisburg. And our goal is not to be submitted to every homeless veteran, but there's going to be the ones that have not succeeded in already the infrastructure that's already out there. So what we want to do is we want to focus on those ones that have not succeeded and be able to provide them an opportunity, give them a hand in an alternative type of transitional home and housing project that has been proven in other parts of the country.
If there are any opportunities for us to advocate for local veterans to get that housing, please let us know so we can share that information right now.
Absolutely. And we are working with Already and other infrastructure and work with homelessness, as well as what I mentioned, that not everybody's going to qualify or be part of our program. We have to point them in the direction and help them get to where they need to go.
Great. I didn't have any further questions, given that it is such an opportunity to start with Councilman Ballard.
Thank you. I don't think I have any questions. Oh, maybe just one. I think during our last discussion, you talked about the community center being accessible to all residents. Is that accurate, or did I miss that?
No, that's correct. All residents. And actually there will be activities for anybody who has served as a veteran. Doesn't typically have to be a homeless person, but they might have some conditions. We're working, as I mentioned, with other organizations, having meetings, having different things, whether or not it's workshops to how to manage your money, how to interview, PTSD issues, all those things that will be open to the veterans as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't have any additional questions.
Councilman Green,
Thank you. I don't have any questions tonight. Thank you.
President Williams.
Yes, thank you for coming to see. I'm really concerned what I just heard. So we're done prioritizing Harrisburg veterans here. This is out, this is for the Dauphin County area.
No, I'm sorry. This is for the city of Harrisburg.
Oh, okay,
This is-
okay.
But some of the people on my board.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure.
No, and we've
This is in
actually.
Harrisburg, you're not gonna prioritize.
No, this is,
Our
no,
residents, our veterans.
they will take a priority.
Okay. Thank
We've
you.
actually done studies, and one of the reasons why we chose the city of Harrisburg is because of the high number of homeless.
Yes, that's right. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Vice President Allen, have no questions of this time? Councilman Green.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that about the floodplain being above the base elevation. How far above the base elevation are you looking to go?
In the building is 4 feet above that. So it should be as far.
Okay, thank you. And then one of the questions that I had before, do you have an idea of when the last time that area had received any flooding? I understand the 100 and 500 year floodplain, but that's just a chance that it could happen once in 100 years. But we know that we're seeing increased weather events that are shorter duration but high severity. So do you have any idea of the last time that area we have received flooding?
I don't know any records of that because they're not residents. Yeah, it's vacant.
Okay. So Right, but so with it being vacant, that's part of my concern, right? So it's a vacant area, it receives water, we have, we have everything above here that runs down towards the river. And since it has been for so long, we don't have that understanding of when the last time that area flooded. So my concern just with the proximity to the river, and where things are that could, as we're going to build, we're going to experience flooding and how do we deal with residents that are veterans that are, as you mentioned, isolated from the rest of the city that could especially experiencing the flooding. Concerns with being able to access that area should something occur. It's something that I'm concerned about. And this fall out with respect to the stormwater management. What is to when the capital region were on the same page, what is that would still need to be provided?
So there is a letter from Capital Region Water that outlines the conditions and what they want to see happen. Capital Region Water is deferring to PADE for their review and approval. And that includes the exemption of the stormwater management provision. So once DEP does their review, I think it's back to CRW, and CRW gives us the okay, we're fine.
Okay, so we make that a condition.
It is a condition, it's already in the resolution.
Okay.
So there are several permits that are required for the development. There's an ES permit that's issued by the County Conservation District. There's a G4 that is for the stormwater discharge to the Paxton Creek. Those are the permits that CRW reference and that the obtaining of those permits by those entities. So yes, those are permits that we need to in the process of obtaining that, they will have access to the route plans.
So the plan would be for that to be a direct discharge to that stormwater infrastructure there.
So we do have significant stormwater management facilities proposed. We have stormwater, 2 infiltration basins and 2 repurpose there. When I say the discharge, so they do provide infiltration and detention for rate control. So we are controlling volume and rate, but the discharge pipe does outlet into the Paxton Creek. That's the only place for it to go in that area. There's no storm sewers in that area, so it does not connect to storm sewers there.
Yeah, no, I previously served on the authority, so that's part of my concern as well on that. So again, we're still in a consent decree from the EPA, and even though we'll be a smaller community, direct discharge into Paxton Creek.
So this does not discharge into combined sewer system. It is not, nothing from this project is into combined sewer system.
That goes to the creek extends to river. Right.
Now, CRW did review our stormwater management plans, our stormwater management report, they have comments. There should know that we had all the regulations.
So we'll just wait to hear back. We have a timeline from.
I've not spoken to DEP, I don't even in contact with CRW. Yeah, I understand that our process with DEP would be up to the ES permit, which includes our stormwater management report and our team GP5 for that discharge. That process, our plans, our stormwater.
Okay, and then all of the retention and catch basins you're looking to install, you think would offset any of the requirements for the stormwater fee at all, so you're looking to have a blue wood fees associated with any stormwater fees.
That I'm not, I can't speak to the stormwater fees. We are building. We are also providing for stormwater management to meet the requirements for construction. the rate environment rules.
Right, one second, so Capital Region Water has a stormwater fee currently. Everything you're doing, you believe will offset any of the fees that would have been charged by Capital Region Water. So again, every ratepayer in the city of Harrisburg pays a stormwater fee, or in Capital Region Water's coverage area will be a part of that coverage area, correct? Right, so that's what I'm asking is everything that you're planning going to offset, what you're looking to receive is the offset of the associated. Capital Region Water does provide folks that are that won't be getting into the CSO system with the ability to have some sort of offsets of their rates. So I'll just use my property as an example. I have a property in the city of Harrisburg, and my rain gutters discharge directly back into the drains and then into the CSOs. There's a fee associated with that. If I do improvements on my property, gardens, catch bases, et cetera, then I can talk to the Capital Region Water about coming out, looking at that, and potentially having some sort of offset from that fee. Is that what all of this is going to be doing?
Anytime we go in, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but anytime we add purpose cover, there are requirements in the city code, in the Norwegian waters, stormwater guidelines. We have to manage rate environment. Those are requirements. The waiver or the credit on stormwater fee would have to be measures to go above and beyond what's required. So we have not done an analysis of what type of credit they could receive. We have provided what's required to have this credit.
Okay.
There may be some credits, but what we have demonstrated right now is that we are meeting the requirements to build this in place. Meet requirements for the environment.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Daniel?
So, this is for Mr. Knight. Can you tell us how this land was zoned prior to this?
Yes, it was zoned industrially under the initial zoning code map that was adopted in 2015, I believe in 2016. It was rezoned to riverfront, and that included I believe also the property on South Main Street, so just north of the facility.
And prior to that,
Under the old zoning code, I would guess heavy industry.
do you have a historical sense of what it was?
Yeah, I believe the Phoenix Houston was there. You still see yeah, you can still see remnants of that.
Are there remediations that were taken after those, whatever was there? Or was there ever a second owner that ever remediated the property? Or was it just abandoned and there's been remediation?
I don't have the answer to that. I guess there's still, I think, some piles of concrete with that around the sites, and like I said, not in comments and site remediation.
Are you able to like let us know what the history of the condition of the property was?
Sure, I may need to research files. I don't know if the city's files on that.
So, but at least online for the DEP purposes, if there's was ever a phase 1 or environmental or anything like that, that's all available online.
You know, just looking generally at that, I suspect 2011 was the last time there was a plan in that area, because that area is similarly situated on the map of my home, and 2011 was like the last time. So that's pretty recent, I think, right? So this is supposed to be but based on where it's located. So I think y'all need to. Was there a reason why you selected this property site as opposed to other lots in the city?
Well, actually, this property was a gift to us 5 acres was donated to us by a private family. That was number one, but number two, the location. As I mentioned before, there's other communities like this throughout other parts of the country. And the 3 founding members of our board went to the original one in Racine, Wisconsin. And one of the things that he talked about was keeping our homeless veterans in their environment. Keeping them near public transportation. This property was perfect for us because of the safety of it, the isolation, the character for the homeless veteran, and just what they need to be. Yet they're close enough to everything that needs to have access to. So if they need to go to a meeting, if they need to go for interviews, they have that public access for transportation, but yet they still can feel safe, secure in the environment.
So remember last year, some of the organizations mentioned that the urgency for approving that subdivision was the ability to raise funds for the project. Is there a cost differential in terms of building structures in a zone that has to be flooded a lot versus in a zone that doesn't have to be flooded a lot? Like, would it have been similarly costly to just build in a location, even though you have to buy the land, but you're not in a flood zone, versus even the free land, but you have to build more costly units to survive floods?
Well, they don't have to build to flood standard. That's kind of one of the goals of the project, is to have the development outside of so that, yeah, they're not having to anchor the buildings or build flood vents or have an engineer certify the survivability of the structure. So they're not having to build to a higher standard. Now, that being the case, they are in the 500-year plan. There's always a recommendation to be proactive, I guess, to design with that in mind, but there are no regulatory requirements for standards.
And then, could you give us a little bit of history of the organization, the services it currently provides? And I know this is a different project, please, how will the listing project be different from the services currently provided? You know, how, I guess, if you could just.
Well, actually, there is no services being provided at this time. We're an entity of board members. We have nine board members. We have our architectural firm, we have our engineering firm, we have our legal counsel, and we have spokespersons who are retired generals, and we also have a consultant, and who's in the room today, who is consulting us. But the idea and services won't be provided until the community is built. We have met though with all of most of all the organizations that provide services, whether it be for homelessness or recovery programs, and we've had a very, I want to say 100% acceptance and support for what we're trying to do, because what we're trying to do is bring those that have fallen through the cracks, making it so they can live a normal life and get back into society. Each one will be on a case-by-case basis. There's not going to be a set program where you have 30 days or 60 days. There is going to be no charge. This is going to be all funded through corporate charities, foundations, privately, raising monies. And our goal is to eliminate homelessness in the city of Harrisburg.
So in the application where it says that there will be 3 full-time employees, with the other one, those are for the construction, not the services.
No, they will be for the services once it is built. Those are the 3, there'll be 3 full-time, 2 part-time, based on the infrastructure and already existing communities throughout the country, based on what we feel has been historically provided from the other organizations that will guide us. And for us to do a budget, so we needed to do a capital campaign budget, as well as we need to do a working budget. We needed to know what this is going to cost on a yearly basis and how much money are we going to raise. And we want to make this sustainable. This is not something that we want to just build and, not do. So we really, I think, done our due diligence, and we are continually tweaking and modifying as we go on. But with the number of 15 residents, we feel that that's going to be necessary.
So you don't know right now, what does 5 people do, like, that's kind of a good ratio to have. For the workers or the population or something.
Well, we know one of them is going to be executive director. One of them is going to be case manager. One of them will be a secretary. Those are the 3 full-time positions. And the part-times will be fill-ins to get started. The case managers will work individually with all 15 of the homeless veterans that will be in our community. And they will put programs together for them to be able to graduate and move on and be normal state.
That's. Oh, how long did you say you all have been in existence?
I'm sorry, we actually formed the nonprofit organization in November of 2018. It's taken this long to do some of the due diligence that we needed to do to make sure that the property was buildable. Even though it was donated to us, we had to make sure that, especially since it was a corporation on it before, we wanted to make sure that we can build on it. And so by doing that, we I think in time steps necessary to get to the point where we are today. Any other additional questions?
Yes, I do. So, and again, have you done any, this would be the first project for the organization, or have you done similar projects?
This would be our first project, but in dealing with local accounting and or local engineering and so forth that have worked on other projects. Nothing like this has been around. Maybe that's why it's taken us 2 years to get to where we're at right now. This is something that's unique, and it's a new project for us. We're using the guidance of the existing communities.
Okay, and have existing communities built their properties similarly situated, so right in a 500-year floodplain or 100-year floodplain.
Most of the communities that have been built in the city, I don't know the locations of the rivers running through them or not.
Could you give us a list of communities that you're modeling this project after? All right, thank you.
Anything, Spain you would like to add, or, yeah.
No, I think that to the applicant's point, this is a unique project. It's the first tiny home project of any size, certainly here in the city of Harrisburg. And housing first model for the rest of homelessness has proven its viability over time. And so, we're happy to see a project like this and hope it flourishes and it becomes a model for how to address the problem amongst the larger population.
Yeah, provide us with that list. And we'll move this for a vote at our next legislative session. So, yeah, that concludes.
Councilman, where do I send the list? Email to you? Or
You send us our clerk.
Okay.
Word it to the rest. Council members, have any questions? Let me know. Ask the applicant. It's a discussion for resolution. Thank you. Next, we have resolution 54 of 2021. Mr. Petrosky, could you read the resolution into the record?
Resolution 54 of 2021 is a resolution approving a preliminary final land development plan to convert an existing vacant building into a mixed-use building featuring office space and multifamily dwelling units at 28 and 38 Cambridge Street.
Okay. I just hear the applicant state their name to the record.
Matthew Long, Cambridge Street.
Live on Okay, thank you. I know you.
Yeah, so the application for you is somewhat unique for the Cameron Street corridor. It's a proposal to convert the vacant buildings on the 2 lots into a mixed-use project with office space on the first floor of 28 Cameron Street and a multi-family dwelling use featuring 6 units on the second floor of 38 Cameron Street. The abandoned building in Cameron Street will be renovated office space and residential units. The floor plans show that the units range in size from 1,075 square feet to 1,285 square feet in area. As noted, it's a somewhat unique project here, kind of to Mr. Grumbein's earlier point about the history of Harrisburg. Everybody knows about residential and commercial buildings, but we have industrial history here, and a lot of that is along the Cameron Street corridor. And fortunately, over time, flood or the economic circumstances, we've lost a lot of those buildings. And more recently, just to the west along Market Street, we lost a lot of those big structures there. So when we get a project like this, where we're looking at reusing buildings and adaptively reusing buildings, viable for modern needs, it's something that we're always kind of really interested to see and happy to see because it does help support the revitalization of this industrial history that is with that, the Planning Commission and the Planning Bureau both recommend that the City Council approve the request with the following conditions. The applicant shall include landscaping and lighting plans to accompany the development plan prior to recordation of the project with Dalton County deeds. And then revised plan sets will also be included in all conditions adopted by City Council. The parking area along the Cameron Street frontage will have a physical division on the property line between the parking lot and the sidewalk to prevent encroachment of vehicles right of way. So we've been kind of in this area of Cameron Street to the north and south. You know that auto repair, auto sales, a lot of times. Parking lots for those are right along the sidewalk, and vehicles tend to encroach onto the sidewalk, which means what's already kind of an unpleasant experience for pedestrians along this corridor more dangerous. And so we want to make sure that as we're looking at new development of these properties, we're keeping that in mind to make sure that pedestrian safety is put kind of front and center involved in our missions and our policy here in the city. So, and it's a condition that the applicant has agreed to have a low physical barrier, so something that's not going to prohibit visibility of vehicles going into the site or out of the site, but something that will prevent vehicles from pushing onto the site. The Planning Bureau would recommend that the sidewalks on Cameron Street be reconstructed to remove the unnecessary driveway aprons, so particularly in front of 28 Cameron Street. It's got a driveway apron that's not the width of the property. Obviously, with the way the vehicle access and vehicle parking on the site will be situated, that will be narrowed as part of this project. So we're recommending that the driveway apron also be narrowed to again enhance the pedestrian infrastructure. And finally, the applicant will ensure that all property investment flood-proof measures are discussed with the floodplain administrator in advance of the work to ensure that the applicable local and national floodplain regulations. The property is obviously adjacent to Paxton Creek, it's in the way, and that does not mean it's not redevelopable, but it does impose certain conditions. And for a project of this type, especially for 28 North Cameron Street, you're probably looking at dry flood providing permeable treatment to the exterior of the building and things like floodgates, reopening doors and such. We have a couple of those other projects here in the city, largely on the Hack campus, so they do something similar. So it's not necessarily new or different seen here in the past, but it is a consideration for the applicants going forward. This will likely cross the substantial improvement threshold as outlined in our flood regulations. The Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the request for the following reasons. The land development plan appears to comply with all relevant standards for zoning and SELDO regulations. The project will adaptively reuse long vacant buildings once owned by the city and HRA to create office headquarters and 6 2-bedroom residential units to be the transition area from its industrial roots to a more mixed-use neighborhood. The project results in the retention of historic industrial structures, which is unique for the adaptively produced structures. including AE for play. And finally, the project will contribute to the vitality of the chemistry corridor, the eventual Paxton Creek Greenway, proposed in various state studies and cities.
Yeah, can have anything like that?
I mean, I'm sure all you're familiar with this property. This has been in the city's hands for quite some time. That's all the HRA about 2 years ago. And this goes back to 95, they got community development funds, federal, and it sat vacant and it's been passed on. It's watering for about 9 years, so we took the entire building. The Pennsylvania State Employee Retirement System had a evaluation done that said it would cost 1.2 to 1.4 million there this time. We're gonna cross that repairing it, but it's a better option. And we've gone to great lengths to try to design this to make it adaptive for use. Housing is all going to be established out of the floodplain, 4.5 feet long. Utilizing that second floor. It's going to great lengths on the all space to use waterproof products pretty much until we get base water knowledge.
Just one follow-up comment, the RGC is pretty straightforward. If there are opportunities for local contractors, please send us that information so we can share it through our networks, so local folks can bid on the project. Do you have a plan for MWB participation?
We always have, and we always have 10% primarily our one electrician is almost guaranteed to be on the project. But we also have several.
I'll open it up to questions now. Right, Councilman.
I don't think you're able to share this one, we can sense of what kind of business is.
Well, it will actually be our business on the side. So the first floor of 38 is kind of up in the air. It's in the floodplain, kind of hard to do anything. It can support parking. We have it on that show parking. Mainly factor of the action organization. If that ever does happen, then that can be, that is actually shown in packets, that exact building being reused in commercial setting. It's actually in the illustrations shows it as a virtual with the Appalachian Brewing Company and the boardwalk and everything up and go on the current proposal. So that's just kind of sitting there, the office space working in that section.
Councilman.
Yes, thank you. Then in terms of the housing, at what price point, what type of housing are we looking to put in that apartment?
Yep, it's not gonna be, I mean, we have a very high threshold for which this is gonna cost. I can't by any means say it's gonna be affordable. But also, I can't say it's gonna be market because there is a parallel market. It's a trial and error. I would say realistically, there's somewhere around 1,200 in its campus. And that's the true reality.
Right, and just thinking about where it is, across the street, and everything. Like, I'm just trying to think of, the type of housing we're looking at there. Yeah, okay. No further questions.
Vice President Allen. Timeline, everything moves forward, kind of stuff.
About a year for construction, there are allocation issues now. The polyiso roof, we can't get on. This roof, Bradley's October.
I know in the past, I don't know if it's true with this one, but there are concerns about the environmental conditions and something that affect this project. At quarters.
Yeah, we went through, there was lists that there was an underground oil tank, we had radar, there was nothing in the parking lot there. there was comments that there were tunnels underneath it, and I've been through every square inch of the school. It's Harrisburg, it's, it doesn't actually exist. The only evidence that we have of anything that's not environmental impact is that at some point, someone spent a lot of money, I'm assuming it was Keystone Building Products, to reinforce the entire portion against the past creek as a probably 1970s, 1980s foundation wall that's about 3.5 thick that was put in there. I mean, there's no evidence of any environmental discharge on the property. Maybe was there an oil tank or something that way, but I don't understand why it's seen.
That's all. Thank you. President Williams.
Just wait to answer the question.
Wendy.
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Councilman Mathers.
Thank you. I do have a question relative to the 6 units. That would be that 30. You mentioned that it's sort of trial and error at this point. Your estimated one is $1,200. Just for your reference, this city council passed an affordable housing legislative package. Our mandate was 20%. So with this, it would be 1 unit that would be deemed affordable. Is that something that you guys are open to? Would you participate in the program?
I haven't followed the last bit of it there. I know there was some discussion on the HUD guidelines and how it would be adopted, and I didn't actually see since it's been adopted how that came up. No, I mean, I had the price point in my head of what we could go down to all the seconds camera shoot. I mean, we could go down. In my head, I'm picturing it's pretty close to this. So I won't say it's that.
Okay, thank you.
Since we passed that resolution, when we can start, I know some of the projects are sort of grandfathered in, when we can start, when that applicant would have been well aware of that, given an opportunity to participate in it.
Sure, so originally we were targeting midsummer, to be able to develop the forms, the application process and things. The program is going to be administered by Ms. Emma Watson. She has since submitted her resignation and will be done at the end of June. She did provide Jeff and I with a draft of some of the application materials, which we will now need to review. And there has not been anyone named at this point to oversee the affordable housing program. Since there really is no economic development department at this time, and it's not staffed. But Jeff and I will certainly have some internal discussions and see how we can move this forward and make it available to developers.
Yeah, as soon as you have that, you can let us know, so then the question, yeah, why? Is there any other questions? Anything else from the applicant? Seeing none, we will move resolution 54 to our next legislative session for a vote. That concludes the business of community and economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Now we move on to public comment, and please limit it to 2 minutes. I will take anyone from the right who would like to speak, please, this time.
Good evening, council. Nice to see you in person once again. I know that I call you folks to task often, so I'm gonna start tonight by making a couple of thank yous. In particular, thank you, Councilperson Green, for getting the police commissioner here and for pushing for a date for the next report. And thank you to Council President Williams for raising the issue about police dispatch, because that is certainly something that I have experienced personally, making a call to dispatch and the person that I'm talking to doesn't even know where it is in the city. I understand the costs, related to that, but thank you for at least raising that issue. But a couple of things, in general tonight, sitting back there, it was really hard to hear because people didn't use the microphone. And I missed the commissioner's entire initial report. And I got a few texts that apparently people who were watching it online could not hear it either. So that now means that we have to wait until a report is available publicly to actually know what was being said. And I still am in the no data, no dollars kind of thing. You gave the police department the highest budget that they've ever had in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg history. So then I think you also need to expect from them something which reaches that level. Because you've said that that's what's most important for us as a city, is policing. And so then, if that's what's most important, then what you need to get back from them has to be that. And we've been talking about this for 38 years. The first requirement for the police department to make a report to council was 38 years ago. It was yearly, and then in 2016 or 2017, I don't remember which, it went to quarterly. And we're still having trouble getting those reports. So I also appreciate, Councilman Majors, that you asked for what's needed. But what really wasn't answered was why the delay. The other thing I'd like to just raise a couple issues about is Resolution 53, the tiny village, the Veterans Village. It is such a good idea. It makes it hard to want to raise questions about it. But I have real concerns. I mean, this organization hasn't been around. 2020 was the first filing. I checked ProPublica, GuideStar, and Charity Navigator, and they listed assets of 180,000. So now they're going to build a village and hire staff. It just kind of doesn't fit. There's a lot of questions to be answered. One of the other things is, well, I looked at their advisory board and there were a lot of generals on it, but so was Peggy Grove and her son, who gave them the property. And I didn't see anybody on the advisory board or in their board bios that were formerly homeless people. So my question is, did they actually even talk to any homeless veterans living right here? Like, did they actually go down under the Mulberry Street Bridge and actually talk to anyone? That raises questions for me. And their filings have, and some of this was raised by Councilwoman Daniels, but there's no programs, there's no results, there's nothing on operations. And while we encourage them to do WMBE, their entire board and their entire advisory board is white. And again, that raises questions for me. And I'm still not convinced on their floodplain kind of thing. And I do think about that because climate change is happening so rapidly now. And it may be that the building that collapsed in Florida was due to climate change. So it's just some things to think about, some questions that I don't think are fully answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on my right? Anyone in the middle? Anyone to my left?
Good evening, everyone. I'll go over it.
My name is Patrick O'Connell. I'm here this evening because after quite a laundry list of concerns, and I'm going to start by first thanking Mr. West, who I can say has been doing a fantastic job, even as the former deputy assistant director, Mr. Johnson, before he retired, and has been working with our community, which is Manada and Lennox, to try to basically address the issues that we have. About 2 years ago, we came to the city council meeting, my wife and I, to discuss a matter which was really infesting the neighborhood, which was a bunch of stray cats and people feeding those cats. And one of the issues was a resident that apparently many years ago was her home was condemned because of an infestation in dead cats, and so on and so forth. But yet to this day, this person, Mr. West can attest to that, is living in a trailer on the property. And according to some of the residents of the postal service, she still goes back and forth inside of the home that has been condemned. And these cats now are coming back, and there are feces all around the place in your yard. And when you're trying to beautify your home in your yard, you have your kids. The last thing you want is to step out and step into feces. So we hear that that neighbor that's actually with the home just adjacent to hers has been to court several times, and we only end up just finding her, and she goes right back into the same process. We would really like something to be done about this, and no more just back and forth, just being fun, but actually addressing the issue at its core. The other thing that I have is signs for our neighborhood. Some of the residents, we are in the older community. So most of the residents have been there for 40, 50, 60 years and so forth, different homes on the block. And some of the signs that we have, Mr. West has been out and he's actually seen them dilapidated, crushed up and so forth, bent up, rusted. And that's really not okay at all.
So what type of signs are you talking
Oh, street signs.
about?
Yeah, street signs. So we have reached out to Mr. Thomas at the traffic department manager. He said he will be out on Friday to do a little walk around with us to see the signs. The other thing we're in need of your assistance with is speed bumps. We would like some speed bumps for our community.
You can't do no problem.
Oh, I can say afterwards and get some information for you, so we can have correspondence on all of those issues.
And then on the stray cats,
Excellent, excellent, thank you so much. And the reason why we're requesting speed bumps is because part of our request for the signs as well is to try to stop the through waste traffic. Because at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, cars come through that area and they go at a high speed. They even blaze through the stop signs. Mr. West, while he was out there, like, oh, just run straight by, and that's not okay because we have neighbors that have small kids, and the kids are sometimes playing around. And when the kids get run over, well, then that becomes a big problem. So we'd like to prevent it before anything like that happens. Hence the request of people, but we'll discuss about that. And then last but not least, yes, the potholes, Mr. West, you see they're coming out and they will be addressing that for us. And I just want to say that for the time that Mr. West, yes, he has been on the job, and whenever we call him, he responds. He does respond, and sometimes probably I think he gets tired of me calling him all the time, but he still responds when I call it, and I want to say thank you for that, because you do a great job. And that means a lot, especially we have the cleanup campaign we're going to start, which we're going to talk about the communities and so forth. Because of this support, we're able to actually this July 17. In our community to help some of the older citizens who have a lot of stuff in their basements and in their yard that create more of a hazard. And now we're able to actually take that out in some public work to be involved. But again, my key thing is asking for assistance with the signs and see what we can do about the promise. But thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. Please stay on. Mr. West, thank you.
Thank you.
That's your issue. Anyone else to write out? Hearing none, I have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.